Alright, welcome to another video for Unit 7. We're talking about circles, and so in this video we're going to talk about the equation of a circle in the coordinate plane. And so follow along. You were given this notes page in class, so make sure you're following along with me on that. Okay, so let's take a look. Go ahead and fill your name in. This is Unit 7, Day 5. Alright, and the very first main idea we have is the equation of a circle, and we write this in what's called standard form. And as we get into more advanced equations in the coordinate plane, they have different forms they can be written in. Even lines can be written in several different forms. Slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, or other forms. Okay, so this is the standard form of an equation. So make sure you write this down. Okay, and in the previous lesson we talked about the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And that's actually where this comes from, because we can define a circle around a point by kind of breaking it down and using the Pythagorean theorem. So that's why this looks similar to that. We have something squared plus something squared equals something squared. Okay, so in each of these parentheses, though, the x and y are always part of your equation, and the h and k represent the coordinates of your center, and r is the radius of the circle. So we're going to fill those in. The coordinates h, comma, k, okay, that point is the center of your circle. Okay, so we have to define our circle with our center, and r is the radius of that circle. Okay, so we're going to practice just using those coordinates to plug into this formula. Now, I do want to point out that h and k, if they are positive numbers, we will write minuses in the formula, okay, because we're finding the difference between them. So if they're negative, and you do minus and negative here, it changes to plus. So we're always going to look at the opposite of this number. If it's a minus 5, the h coordinate is positive 5. If it's a plus 2 for k, the k coordinate would be negative 2, all right? And so if I have a center at 5, 3, and a radius of 2, okay, I'm going to plug into this formula, x minus the h part of that coordinate squared plus y minus the k part of that coordinate squared equals the r squared. Okay, now the center has coordinates 5, 3. That means 5 is h, k is 3. So I'm going to do x minus 5 and y minus 3. And the radius is 2. Now, I've made a mistake. I left this as 2 squared, and we shouldn't leave it that way. Okay, so I've taken that 2 squared, and I've whited it out, and I want us to replace 2 squared with what it equals, 4. And so we always want to write our answer with a simplified version of it. Okay, so we're going to try number 2. Number 2, we're going to do x minus the x coordinate from the center. Since that is a negative 1, when we do x minus negative 1, that's the same as x plus 1. So we actually turn this into plus 1. And when we do y minus that 7, it stays minus. And the radius is 14. So if I do r squared, I need to do 14 squared, which is 196. Okay? So I would like for you to pause the video and try and do numbers 3 and 4. Pause the video and try and do those numbers on your own, and I will show you what we should get at those answers. So when you're ready and you have them done, click play. Again, I really do want you to pause the video and try it on your own and then see what you get. That's one of the ways you're going to learn how to plug these into the formula, is by trying it yourself and then checking your answers, not just waiting to see what it is and copying it down. Alright, so these are the answers you should get for 3 and 4. Now, you've got to be careful. So you may have actually tried to do this on your own and run into a snag. The reason that these are different maybe than what you have is I want you to look very carefully. On number 3, I've given you a diameter. If the diameter is 18, the radius is 9, so the radius squared is 81. Okay, and these are both negatives, so when I do x minus negative 2, that becomes x plus 2. And y minus negative 11 becomes y plus 11. And then we get 81. Okay, on number 4, once again, I give you the diameter. The diameter is 32. Half of that is 16, so I want to take the radius equal to 16, and I square that, and that's what I get there. But also notice that I just have x squared here, because the x-coordinate of the center point is 0. If I plugged it in as x minus 0 squared, that's the same as just x squared, because x minus 0 is x. So that's why I write it the simplest way possible. Okay? Now, on these next two, I'm going to work them out with you. Okay, the first part for this one is an x plus 4, because the x-coordinate of your center is 4 squared. And once again, since this value for y this time is 0, remember that y minus 0 is just y, so I can just write that part as y squared. And they give you a radius as a radical expression. If the radius is root 47 and I squared that, root 47 squared cancels out that radical, so it's just 47. Okay, same idea down here. The x-coordinate is a 15 now, so I have x minus 15 squared plus y, just said it wrong, y plus 6 squared. Excuse my rambling. And then if the radius is radical 158, and I square that, that's just 158. Okay? And so that's kind of how we can work with those equations. We can also write an equation if we are given the graph, because here's the things we need to know. We need to know the coordinates of the center, and we need to know what the radius is. All right? Okay, here, the coordinates of the center are 3, negative 2. So I know that h equals 3, k equals negative 2. And I need the radius. And if you look closely, we can count the radius. The radius is the distance from the center to a point on the circle. So I can count vertically or horizontally and just count the spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The distance from the center to a spot on the circle is always 5 units. 5 this way, 5 this way, 5 this way, 5 this way. So I know the radius is 5. Okay, so that's enough to write our equation. I can plug in x minus 3 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals our radius of 5 squared. If r is 5, r squared is 25. And that is the equation of the circle in this graph. Okay? All right, so now we can continue to write equations of circles, but we're given a little bit less information. Okay, but here are the things you need to know. We need to know what h and k are. We need to know the coordinates of the center, and we need to know what the radius is. Okay, it doesn't change depending on the problem. We still need those things. How we get those things might change. Now they give you the center. Okay, h is 9, k is 10. So I can start my equation. X minus 9 squared plus y minus 10 squared equals, I need the radius. They tell you this is a point on the circle. That means the distance from this point back to the center is the radius. So even make a little note of that. The radius is the distance from HK to a point on the circle. So we can use our distance formula to find what the radius is. Okay, so the distance from this point to the center point is the radius. So I'm going to remember my distance formula. I take the x coordinates and subtract them. 9 minus 7 squared. And the y coordinates and subtract them. 10 minus 4 squared. Now you'll notice distance formula looks very similar to what we have here. All right. So all I'm really doing is plugging in the given points for x and y into this, okay, and I'm getting an answer for r that way. So 9 minus 7 is 2. 2 squared is 4. 10 minus 4 is 6. 6 squared is 36. So the radius is the square root of 40. But remember, I want the radius squared. So I want to square that, and if you'll remember the examples above, all that means is that I get rid of the radical. So r squared is just 40. So this part is all I'm really having to do to find what r squared is. Okay? All right, we're going to skip example 9, just for the sake of time in our video. We don't need to do that one. Let's turn the page. Okay, we're going to do one more example. We're going to use number 11. We're going to do one more example where we have to write the equation. Again, I need HK, coordinates of the center, and I need the radius. All right, and we find the radius using distance formula. All right, so there's the coordinates of our center. So I can do the left side of my equation, x plus 2, because it's a negative here, squared, plus, and since this is a 0, y minus 0 is just y, not 0. So that's just y squared. And now I need to find the radius using the distance formula. Okay, we're going to do negative 9 minus negative 2, or make it plus 2. And negative 4 minus 0. Square that. Negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. Negative 7 squared is positive 49. Negative 4 minus 0 is negative 4. Negative 4 squared is positive 16. 49 plus 16 is 65. So the radius is the square root of 65, but radius squared is just 65. Okay? All right, let's do a couple more examples. All right, we're going to take a look at when we are given a slightly different piece of information. Remember, we need the coordinates of the center, and we need the radius. Well, this time, the other given information is the circumference. Remember, the formula for circumference is pi times diameter. So in this case, the diameter equals 6. So if the diameter is 6, the radius is 3. It's half of that. So our formula, or our equation for the circle, is x plus 1 squared plus y minus 4 squared equals our radius 3 squared, which is 9. So again, go back to those formulas to find those pieces. Okay, we are going to skip the 13 through 15, and we're going to look down here at number 16. We can go backwards from our equation to identify these things. Remember, I need h, k, and r. So the center is hk. Remember that it was always the opposite. If I started with a 5, we would do x minus 5. That means the center's x-coordinate is positive 5, and the center's y-coordinate is positive 1. And the radius squared, in this case, is 64, so I need the square root of 64, which is 8. Okay, we can do one more of these. Let's jump down to number 18. Number 18, we have just x squared. That means the x-coordinate for your center is 0, and we have y plus 10. Remember, that was y minus negative 10 to change it to plus. So the y-coordinate of your center is negative 10. Okay, and it asks for the diameter, so I'm going to find the radius and multiply by 2 to get the diameter. Well, the radius is the square root of 42.25, which works out to be 6.5, and the diameter is 6.5 times 2, which is 13. All right, and that wraps up those notes. I am going to also attach a filled out version of all of the examples given in this video, so if you need extra practice, you can try some of these and check your answers. But other than that, be ready to work on these questions in class when you come back to class.